Hey, yo, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, it's not often we talk about Remington Park, but we have a really good reason to this weekend. On Friday, it is the Springboard Mile card. So we've got an all stakes late pick five anchored by the one of the early derby preps for 2 year olds. Remember Giant Mister from last year. So let's dive into it. So this is the Remington Park Late Pick 5, which comprises races 6 through 10, and it's for Friday's card, which is the Springboard Mile card. And leg number one is the Jim Thorp Stakes, the sixth race. It's run at a mile, and it's for 3 year olds only, Oklahoma breds. And this race I thought was pretty. The middle section of this group is pretty much wide open, but I think at the top, CW Prize represents to me the horse who's most logical in here. Has had a steady progression, has been getting better with every single race from a class level standpoint. That's exactly what you want to see coming into a race. So I think CW Prize has shown again the steady progression, and more importantly has raced at a higher class level than a lot of these, and that's really the differentiating factor here. Eakley is trained by Donnie Von Himmel, and he's got Richard Aramia aboard, and they're just lights out together. And Donnie Von Himmel is a great trainer, and you see him at Oakland a lot, but his barn's really clicking well at Remington right now, and this one has shown flashes of talent. It hasn't been necessarily consistent, but represents pretty much the lone speed in here. And with the barn being as hot as it is, I think this is one that has the potential to wire it, given the right circumstances, and is a pretty good fit here. So we'll throw Eakley in as well, and then Codaline. Is a pretty good class fit. Is again a lot of these are a little on the inconsistent side, but this one is coming into this race, I think, poised for a good one. Not sure that he matches up with CW Prize or even Eakley, but I think it is one that looks to me like one that's poised for a pretty good race. For as far as underneath goes, in the exotics, aside from the sequence, there's certainly a lot of ways to go, but none of them really that get my blood boiling. Rachel's Caper, maybe you want to think about, but as far as win candidates, I think it's these top three with a strong emphasis on CW Prize. Leg two is the seventh race. It's the Trape Stakes. It's run at a mile for 2 year old fillies. And this one is, I think, pretty straightforward. West Omaha looks to me like the one who's ready to pop and run a good one. Brad Cox, Flavian Pratt, kind of hard to miss. Bringing Flavian Pratt in for this one, I think, is a good sign. I'm sure he's here for the Springboard Mile as well. But this one improved dramatically in the next start, taking him wire to wire. Don't know if that'll be necessarily the strategy here. Probably be running off the pace, but has a speed edge over the rest of the field, and I think is the logical win candidate. A couple other alternatives. Miss Code West has been is undefeated, but against state breds. And this would be open company, so I'd expect this to be a pretty good challenge. But this is a really nice horse. And won very professionally last time. Really liked what I saw. Going to have to step it up again, of course, but might be a sleeper in here at 6-1. Texas Women for the Arts. It's trained by Steve Asmussen, checks a lot of boxes connections-wise. But the thing about this one was that last race came up from fairly off the pace and closed very well. But I think running that far behind did cost her a chance at winning. It's entirely conceivable this one will be a little more forwardly placed, but I think that probably is a challenge. I don't expect there to be a real hot pace to run to in here. Just mentioned Sensational. I'm sure that's one that a lot of people are looking at because it's a Steve Asmussen. But the thing with Sensational, if you deep dive into her record. They have been dropping her in class steadily. And while her class rating per race is improving, she's doing so against weaker company each time. So that tells me that this one maybe isn't up to par here and would have to step it up significantly with a big class test. Laurie's Secret is one I think you can think about it under at 10 to 1. It's a pretty good scenario for Eddie Milligan, and his barn is going really well right now. The last time, he only has one other time he's had this type of scenario, but it did produce a second place finish. So this one looks to have a little bit of quality. I don't think it's good enough to win this race, but one I would consider underneath. So West Omaha, to me, is the logical choice to win this race, and I think you could perhaps even consider singling. Leg 3 is the 8th race. It's the She's All In Stakes. It's at 1.70 miles for 3-year-olds and up, fillies and mares. And this is a kind of a tricky race, I think. Perfect Wish is a tepid 5 to 2 favorite, and I really don't like her in this spot. She hasn't really been running at the same class levels as some of the other ones in here. And that, to me, is kind of a bet against automatic. You've got a couple on the front end, so the pace should be fairly lively. Faith Alone is coming off a career high, but really didn't run as good a field as Palace Inn has. So I'm going to give Palace Inn a little bit of the edge, has better speed figures, and I think will likely control. Though I do think Faith Alone's in pretty good form, just don't think it's quite good enough. Ella the Ball is third off the layoff, and that's a 27% angle. And I think Ella the Ball is coming into this race in pretty good form as well. Looked awful solid in the last race, and I think is ready to move forward. Excuse me. Blame It on Midnight is another one that is a big girl, and she ran against the boys last time and acquitted herself pretty well. I think she'll be coming late and could benefit from the pace duel. So I think Blame It on Midnight is one to consider. You've got a couple others in here that are really logical, but they both kind of have second-itis. Our Davina and Tiffany Twist. Tiffany Twist is just too many seconds for me. This is a nice horse, and I think fits here class-wise and everything else, but you just can't get past the fact this horse just doesn't close the deal and has had opportunities to do so. Our Davina ran a really nice race last time, and I think will be rolling late. But again, a lot of seconds and hard to trust as a win candidate. So I think this race you have to spread, but I think there's some value to be had. If I had to pick one, I kind of like Blame It on Midnight or Ella the Ball, but Palace Inn could clearly get free. So I think it's those three, and then the other two with an asterisk by them I would consider to be underneath based upon all the seconds they've got. Leg 4 is the Jeffrey A. Hawk Memorial Stakes, the 9th race, and it's a 1.70 miles for 3-year-olds and up. And this is a pretty good race. This is a pretty deep field, I'd say. Looking at the shape of the race, I think Rowdy Rascal will probably be the speed of the speed, but the concern I have is that he's coming off a career high, and he's got a lot of classy challengers in here. Certainly, he's a horse for the course. There's no question about that. But he's going to have a pretty tall order at the longest distance he's gone at to wire this field. So I think it'll be coming from off the pace. A horse Presidential looks really logical in here. The concern I have is that it's had 2 seconds. The last one was in a 4-horse field, pretty much a match race. And while he fought on really well, he just didn't quite have enough to hang on late. I think he fits here. I'm not as confident with him as I am with some others, but he's certainly one to consider. Pioneer Medina, I'm not ready to give up on yet. Brad Cox has had the last start obviously was disappointing, but it was his first with Brad Cox. Sometimes it takes a little while for the new training regimen to kick in. This one's certainly capable on his best day, And I think he certainly is a good class fit here. And with a rebounding effort, I think can factor in this race and is a solid win candidate. The two coming from off the pace, Chrome Baby and U.S. Army. In particular, U.S. Army, I really like. He's by Army Mule, who's a great sire, and much like his grandsire, Freeze and Fire, who got better as he got older. This one looks rounding into form, and I really like what I saw in the last race. And at 12 to 1, I think you're getting outstanding value. So U.S. Army is one I really like here. Chrome Baby, same thing. You're getting not as good a price, but this one came off a really good allowance race last time and came up with the win. I think either one of them is a very live win candidate. I think they're the top two in my estimation as to who will win this race, but certainly Pioneer, Medina, and Presidential will have something to say. Number one dude seems to be a little off of form. If he was back on prior from his back class, he'd certainly be a player here, but lately doesn't seem to have it. So I think he can still factor in this race, but I'm thinking underneath is probably a better bet. U.S. Army looks really good at 12 to 1 to me in a race that I think you need some value. So let's say that for, I think Pioneer, Medina, Chrome Baby, and U.S. Army are the ones I really like the most, but I wouldn't talk anybody out of using Presidential either. The last leg of the late pick 5 is, of course, the Springboard Mile, the 10th race, and it's running a mile, and it's for 2-year-olds, and nobody can forget last year's where Giant Mischief ran that huge race, put him on the radar for the Derby. Didn't turn out too well after that, but it was a pretty exciting race. Hopefully we'll get something similar to that. If you look at this field, the logical players are all lined up here. Otto the Conqueror certainly sticks out from a speed figure standpoint. I don't expect either Fidget or Rhino Runner is going to give him much bother on the front end, and it really will be his race to lose. Most of the others will be coming from off the pace, and so I think it sets up pretty well for Otto the Conqueror to just get on the lead and go. The contenders, Glengarry is one that's kind of logical, and he certainly prior to his layoff was on the improve and running well. But that last race he ran in, one thing I will point out is that he seemed to be holding up in the stretch or backing up a little bit because I believe it was Informed Patriot was getting to him. And so it kind of makes you wonder if a mile is really what this horse wants. I think pedigree-wise, he can probably get it, being by Maximus Mischief. And the Scotsman in me, of course, always roots for a horse named Glengarry. But I'm not as confident in him getting a mile in this race. Gettysburg Address, this is sort of a leap of faith. You have to remember, this is a May 2-year-old. So there's still, he's behind the curve a bit. And there's still some growing to be done. Brad Cox trained, and I don't know that I necessarily like only 3 works off the bench, but Cox wouldn't put him in this race unless there was a reason for it. And of the ones he has in here, I think this one has some upside, and I'm willing to take a chance at 6 to 1, probably more underneath, but you never know. Could with a spurt off the bench could factor in this race. I think it's worth taking a chance at 6 to 1. Raging Torrent is very interesting to me. First of all, what's a California horse doing out in Oklahoma? Doug O'Neill usually doesn't ship unless there's a reason for it, and we've seen him do it. He won, the Allen Jerkins, that ill-fated race, but the name escapes me of the horse. But he brought that one out from out west and did run a really good race despite the auspicious circumstances. So this one has run well at some pretty good races out in California. And the main thing is to note, in the last race, he was being eased up because he was no match for Muth in the stretch. I think this one has more in the tank. It's had a little time to be freshened up. And I wouldn't be surprised if this one runs a really big race. And hopefully we'll get a little better than 3 to 1. But I like Raging Torrent in this race. And then, excuse me, we'll throw in Magic Grant. for the local flavor, more for underneath a closer in these type of races. You do have a couple in here who seem more inclined to sprint, so running from behind is usually a pretty good thing. But I don't expect Magic Grant is a favorite to win this race. I think underneath is more likely. I think this is the Conqueror's race to lose, but Gettysburg Address and Raging Torrent to me do have some interest. And I think it is an intriguing race from that perspective. They're 2-year-olds, so as we know, anything can happen. So here's what the ticket looks like for the Springboard Mile Late Pick 5. In leg 1, we're going to use 4 and 7. In leg 2, we're going to single West Omaha. And doing so is going to allow us a few more options for the latter 3 races. In leg 3, race 8, we're going to use 2, 3, 5, and 7. Leg 4, race 9, we're going to use 2, 3, 8, and 10. And in the final Springboard Mile, we're going to spread a little bit. I don't necessarily think you have to, but we will just because they're 2-year-olds. So we'll go 3, 5, 6, and 8. So that's 2 times 4 times 4 times 4. That's $128 on a $1 ticket or $64 on a 50-cent base. And I think we get through the first couple legs, we got a lot of good options to take it down. And I do think there is value there, particularly with U.S. Army. So that's the late pick 5. I think there's some value to be had in these races. There are a couple of really short prices, I think, in a couple of them, but it should put together for a pretty good ticket if we can get some value home. And I think there is some to be had. U.S. Army in particular, I really like, and if we can get anything near 12-1, I'll be really excited to put some money down on him. Hope our analysis helps you as always with your own wagering strategy. Wish you the best of luck as always. And please like and subscribe if you do like content like this. We thank you all for coming aboard. And thanks for coming by. Look forward to seeing you in the future. We're going to have more developments with regards to our website as well as a podcast, and we will have a Patreon subscription service available to you to start the new year. So be on the lookout for postings in that regard. That's it from here. I'll talk to you soon, and until then, be well.